Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Hardware Podcast. My name's Jackson Danner, alongside my good friend Omar Borja. Today we're previewing Week 11 as well as recapping some of Week 10. Can't believe that we're already at this point in the season. I know we say that every week, but it truly is flying by. We are staring in the face legitimate playoff conversations as the inaugural college football playoff rankings came out for the season. Omar, I know you're a purist that goes by the AP poll, but it is, at the end of the day, it is what matters, right? Although I will give you a friendly reminder that ranking does not equate to seeding. So if your favorite team is ranked in the top 12, then doesn't necessarily mean that you're still going to the playoff. But anyways, you probably know that already if you're listening to this. Omar, how are you doing?
I'm good. Nice to wake up bright and early, talk about some college football. But yeah, the playoff rankings coming out are coming out for the first time is great, honestly. And you mentioned the AP poll, and I think it was like almost the top 12 was almost exactly identical from the college football playoff poll to the AP poll. So definitely something interesting. And I guess it's like the back 13 that you start to see changes, especially like with Army. I'm trying to think who else. I think Clemson dropped a considerable amount compared to their AP ranking. So it's just interesting to see those trends.
Yeah, it is. It's something that we'll keep an eye on. Historically, the initial top four didn't always get in the playoff, but now it's very different, right? With it being a 12-team playoff. So being ranked, fifth or sixth obviously isn't by any means a deal breaker. So, no, it'll be interesting to watch. Very curious how it's going to all play out. Again, it will be decided before Army Navy. So that'll be just another thing to keep our eye on. But anyways, we will talk about. I do want to talk briefly about Ashton Jeanty playing again on prime time in prime time on Fox. Now it's against frankly a pretty bad Nevada team, right? Do you think that will help his case that he will look like a video game player, maybe putting up like 5 touchdowns or something ridiculous? Do you think it'll hurt his case that he's not playing quality competition on primetime TV? Like, what's your angle?
So I think this is a game where a lot of the writers will tune in, especially the writers on the East Coast, because if you think about the network TV slate that day or the big games, the Big Ten Saturday night game is not actually, it's actually big noon Saturday, with Rutgers versus Minnesota. So the primetime game is Notre Dame versus Florida State. I don't think many people are going to watch that. You go to ABC for the other main primetime game. I know it's an SEC game. I forget who exactly it is, but
Alabama LSU.
okay, that's a huge one. So there is a bit of a counter crowd. The West Coast, I'd say, yeah, the West Coast, maybe like the fascinated East Coast crowd would watch Boise State, Nevada. And I think the fact that him being on prime time and not being in a late night slot and being on network TV on Fox, I think it really helps his case out, really. I really think that Boise State, Nevada has a chance to be the second highest rated game of those three, and which would give Jeanty a leg up on the Riders. And I don't think it hurts that it's bad competition. I think Nevada has shown I don't think Nevada's as bad as people really think, honestly, but their run game is bad because keep in mind, like they allowed Braden Shager to run for 120 yards in the run and shoot against him a few weeks ago. And then the prior week against Colorado State, um, I mean, they did better on defense, but um, yeah, I just think it's a great opportunity for a lot of the country to see Ashton Jeanty, a lot of the people without cable, especially viewers on the East Coast. This game kicks off at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So I really think this is going to help his campaign a lot, especially if he runs for 200. I think 200 is realistic at this point, um, just because of Nevada's struggles with the run recently. So.
Yeah, no, it'll be good. I agree on with you as far as I don't think it's going to hurt that it's bad competition. It might help that, San Diego State was a quality opponent when they had the game. Well, I guess it was on CBS Sports Network, which isn't like network TV by any means, but that was their biggest game of the year. We didn't really know who he was when they played Oregon. So that was the biggest game of the year where we knew about Ashton Jeanty, and he wasn't the reason they won that game, right? We talked about that. Oh no, sorry, UNLV. UNLV is the one I'm referring to. So. Yeah, no, I think it'll be good, and hopefully he can put up another. I mean, he's only had two 4 touchdown games. I know I say only two, but it's like sometimes we've talked about him as if he's this guy that's like putting it up every week, and like at the end of the day, he is like that good, right? But it's just not. It doesn't have the. I'm not gonna say it doesn't have the stats to match. I'm just saying that like it's not. You're not looking at it as someone who knows barely anything about, group of five football or anything like that. And like your jaw, it's not enough to vote over like the best player on the best team if you're like a casual voter or like a casual fan, right? So I want to make sure that he does have those. I would like to see him ensure that kind of dominance. So hopefully he has just another ridiculous, game with 4 touchdowns and 250 yards like he's had a couple times this season as well, and we see him kind of put up those video game numbers. But
Yeah, one sec. Yeah, keep in mind just to add on to it, Jackson. This could be the first of three, or this is the first of what could be three network TV appearances for Ashton Jeanty on Black Friday at noon. Boise State has Oregon State, and I'm sure that's a lot of game. Even casual fans will tune in. So you could say that will think
yeah,
Oregon State Pac-2 and everything, and of course the Mountain West Championship game on a Friday night on Fox, which Fox and ABC are going to draw, or they're going to split up the Friday night crowd, but those still should have strong viewership numbers for both conferences, with them being the only games on TV, or at least on network TV. Can't forget about Conference USA since that one's on CBS Sports Network. So this is like a really crucial stretch in Genty's Heisman campaign where he's starting to get more exposure on the linear, or not linear, but the over the air network, your CBS, your Fox, and ABC. Well, not exactly ABC, but CBS and Fox.
it is. It is. Well, we will go ahead and go into our players of the week. My offensive player of the week for week 10, a little D3 shout out for Bates College. Ryan Linsky, the running back from Bates College, in 20 attempts, which by the way is tied for his second lowest run count of the season. So it's not like they were just feeding him the ball. 344 yards and 3 touchdowns. It's an all-time rushing high in the conference, which is the NESCAC, New England Small College Athletic Conference. Unfortunately, Bates is 2-6 overall, and they did lose Saturday to Bowdoin. But if you're a running back and you have a 3 in front of your rush yard total, it deserves to be recognized. So Ryan Linsky.
Yeah, I know our friend, our long time, our old friend of the podcast from a couple years ago, Brendan Costa, will be proud of that performance. Bates Bobcats alum. And I actually have more about the NESCAC later on because it is their rivalry week on Veterans Day. They only play conference games, and the season finale is this weekend for all the schools. Always a great time of year and always a bucket list game to for a lot of those rivalries. Going on to my offensive player of the week, I'm staying with the old Northeastern program. Bucknell, Tariq Thomas had 29 carries for 141 yards, and this came after 145 rushing yards and a pair of touchdowns the prior week against Georgetown and Bucknell. Man, last week I thought Georgetown was a front runner in the Patriot League race. They lost their second conference game, and Bucknell now they beat the defending champion Lafayette 21-14, and they are 2-1, and they control their destiny in the Patriot League with 3 games to play. Yes, they're 4-5 right now, but they have a showdown with Holy Cross in a couple weeks ago. And yes, as a Holy Cross fan, I want the Crusaders to make the playoff. They've had a great year in conference after struggling out of conference, but just for one year, I wouldn't mind Bucknell taking the conference title and going to the playoffs for the first time ever and playing their first true postseason game since the 1935 Orange Bowl. And I mean, I know they played a postseason game with the 2020 pandemic with the Patriot League championship game, but not counting that, a playoff appearance would be their first postseason appearance since 1935. Bucknell's playing well. They've been an incredibly balanced team. Ralph Rucker, Oklahoma transfer, has been having a really nice year throwing the ball, and he showed he can run the ball well as well. A good additionally against Lafayette with a pair of touchdowns. I'm excited for Bucknell. But Bucknell Holy Cross, if they win this week, they can't get caught looking ahead against this Fordham team. But if Bucknell beats Holy Cross, then all that's standing in the way between them and a postseason appearance is a game against Colgate, who right now is 2-6, I believe. So very excited. Definitely a storyline to follow.
More on Holy Cross's game this week later on from me. My defensive player of the week, I'm going to go with Ansel Denbu, the interior defensive lineman from Washington State. The main name on that defensive line that people think about is David Gusta, but this past week in a win over San Diego State, he managed 3 sacks, a quarterback hurry, and another 3 run stops. He's a second-year player out of Aledo, Texas. He got his first career sack just over a month ago, and now this is his second week in a row with at least 2 sacks. He's a really young guy. He enrolled early before the 2023 season, so he's only been with the team for not even 2 calendar years. He's also getting some special teams action on the field goal block and punt return squad. So just a young name to watch out for as the eyes on the Pac-12 are really only going to be growing.
Yeah, like you said, they're number 20. Washington State is number 20. A lot has to happen for them to really make the playoff in the top 12, but it's interesting. I mean, the situation is unfortunate, but I think that they'll be a contender. They'll definitely be a playoff contender once the Pac-12, sorry, Pac-8, or however many number they stop at, or whatever number they stop at, gets going again. So definitely a strong year, and a lot of the attention goes to John Mateer and the year he's having. But I mean, the defense is stout as well. I mean, with the
It's a
exception
good
of the San Jose
defense.
State game.
Yeah. Real quick petition to make it 10 teams and then just use the throwback Pac-10 logo. I think that would be outstanding.
Oh yeah, I would
Um,
love that. Yeah.
Omar, who's your defensive player of the week?
So I'm gonna go with co-honors for Defensive Player of the Week. I got Keon Freeman and Jamar Shagog, both of Robert Morris. Freeman had 17 tackles, Shagog had 15, in Robert Morris's 6-0 shutout of Merrimack, a very hard-fought game against a former conference member. Robert Morris is now 3-0 in the Northeast Conference, and a lot of the attention in the FCS, just talking around FCS, a lot of the attention in the Northeast Conference really goes to Duquesne right now. Talk about Dartmouth later on, but it goes to Duquesne because Duquesne is undefeated against FCS competition. Robert Morris has a loss in non-conference play to FCS competition, so they haven't been talked about as much. But the Colonials are 3-0 in conference play. They play Duquesne this week in what could arguably be the Northeast Conference Championship as well as bragging rights for the greater Pittsburgh, Western Pennsylvania area within the conference. So Robert Morris, it's good. Robert Morris is a good story in conference realignment because they went back to their roots, and they went back to really where they belong after a couple of years struggling kind of, in the Big South and then in the Big South OVC when those conferences merged. Robert Morris is back in the Northeast Conference, and that's really where they belong. That's their sweet spot. And this the last time they've been to the playoffs was 2010. So again, a great year for I guess underperforming Pennsylvania programs with Bucknell and Robert Morris trying to make their first bowl appearance since 2010. So another storyline to watch out for. And then led by the defense. So just a great and an outstanding 6-0 performance against Merrimack for Shamar Shagog and Keon Freeman.
Absolutely. Well, I'm gonna go with my high. In a 24-21 win over North Carolina Central, he had 8 receptions for 113 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's his fourth consecutive game with north of 110 yards, which is just amazing. I also believe he is the MEAC receiving yards leader. I thought that I don't have that in my notes, but I'm gonna look it up right now. But anyways, yeah, outstanding game by Caden High. Anytime it's not like a, 56-55 Texas Tech Oklahoma type game, and it's a close game and you score 2 touchdowns as like a non-quarterback, right? Like you won that game, right? Like you were responsible for 14 of those 24 points in a 3-point victory. So just an outstanding game by Caden. And then I'm looking it up right now. He is the receiving leader, and by a pretty significant margin. He has 740 yards on the year. Second best is 523. So by 220 yards, He's the conference leader. And who's in second place? None other than his teammate, Justin Smith Brown. Fourth place in the conference is Anaj Carter, his other teammate. So just I failed to realize how stacked this South Carolina State wide receiver room is. Good grief, three of the top four receivers in the conference.
Yeah, I mean that South Carolina State, North Carolina Central game was really exciting to watch on Halloween, and I mean my attention actually gravitated to Eric Phoenix, but this is just a different South Carolina State team than you're used to. One not driven by defense, one with a flashy offense at the helm. Eric Phoenix is just playing amazing. I think he's a Walter Payton Award candidate. Not, I really think he's in the thick of the race because if you think last year, Davius Richard finished fifth out of the MEAC, and that was with just a bad performance against Howard in the second to last week of the season that kind of lost North Carolina Central the Celebration Bowl bid. So if he can end up fifth in this race and South Carolina State can end up winning the MEAC, going to the Celebration Bowl. Eric Phoenix might find himself in the top 10. Of course, he's had less flashy numbers and performances than Richard, but man, I'm excited to see where Phoenix ends up in the Walter Payton Award race. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he's a freshman. So I definitely think he's going to be in the top three of the Jerry Rice Award. So I know we're talking about Kate. I know we're talking about Caden High. Caden High was amazing, but I know we focus on quarterbacks a lot in college football, but I fell prey to the trends as a running back and wide receiver guy.
Hey, that's quite literally what we have this podcast for, the to highlight the under celebrated sometimes. So
Yeah, so I mean, going on with my HBCU player of the week, I'm going with a special teamer. Strangely enough, because I like to pick seniors. I like to shine a focus on the All-Star games. So I'm going to go with Marco Jovicic for Mississippi Valley State. I'm going to go dual honors too and highlight another performance that I liked by an underclassman in that game. Marco Jovicic from Mississippi Valley State. Mississippi Valley State almost had it. They lost by one to end their endless season, their winless season. It's just been a tough year for the Delta Devils. They're 0-9 right now, but Marco Jovicic kicked a 51-yard field goal in that game as Mississippi Valley State lost 17-16 to Prairie View. And that was really a surprising result because Prairie View's been competitive the past couple years in the SWAC West. They've had a bit of a down year, but in Itabena, they almost lost. They almost beat them. Joe Visick is a senior. 51-yard field goal in the humidity, low altitude of Mississippi is very impressive. I know he's been struggling this year kicking the ball. 3 of 8 field goals. 2 of them have been blocked though, so it's not totally his fault. But I mean, Joe Visick could find himself in Nollins, with a 51-yard field goal if he picks it up towards the end of the year. But man, you just hate to see it. And I mean, they almost had it like Mississippi Valley State went for two. So it's 17-16, but Joe Visick didn't miss an extra point. Mississippi Valley State went for two at the end and lost. But I want to highlight as well Nathan Rember from Mississippi Valley State, who had 163 receiving yards and a touchdown against Prairie View, 7 catches. On the year, he has 718 yards. He's just a sophomore. He's 5'9". He's your prototypical slot receiver. And man, I hope he stays with Mississippi Valley State because they got some pieces to build on with Rember. They got a young quarterback in Tijerian Thomas who threw for 287 yards last week and ran for 124 yards the week before. Great dual threat. So, man, deep inside, I long for the day when Mississippi Valley State goes to the Celebration Bowl. That is definitely a Celebration Bowl that I will attend because, man, that's just a tough program. But just a great performance by Rembert and Joe Visick, and maybe we'll see Joe Visick kicking field goals out there in Hollins, the Big Easy.
hopefully so. Now that'll be a day. The day that they go to the Celebration Bowl. So I love that we've had like back-to-back weeks of special teamers. Be one of our HBCU players of the week. Last week it was Devin Verstegen, the punter from Winston-Salem, and now this week you have another special teamer. So love seeing those guys highlighted. I'll go ahead and go with my first game of the week to watch, a game that I hinted at a little bit earlier on the show, Lehigh at Holy Cross. Holy Cross has a really strong run game led by Jaden Clervaux. And the Holy Cross defense has a few standouts, but the guy that I'm really a big fan of is Curtis Harris Lopez. He's a safety. He has 9 tackles for loss on the year. None of them are sacks. I'd imagine almost all of them are in the run game. This is a first versus third place competition in the Patriot League. Smacked right in between them in the standings is who you talked a little bit about, Bucknell. The only other team in the conference that can brag on only one conference loss. Holy Cross is undefeated in conference play, so I'd imagine that if they hand UC or if they hand Lehigh their second loss, everyone at Holy Cross is going to be rooting against Bucknell, but Holy Cross is going to be pretty definitively the leader of the conference.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I love about the MEAC and the Patriot League is because they have small memberships. MEAC with 6 teams, the Patriot League's got 7. Next year they'll have 8 teams when Richmond comes along. It's just the fact that it's so hard for there to be insane tiebreakers. It just all gets decided on the field. Everyone plays each other, and this might be one of the last years without these insane tiebreakers. But I mean, Holy Cross controls its destiny. Bucknell controls its destiny. It's going to be exciting, really, because Holy Cross is undefeated in league play. But I mean, Bucknell plays them head to head and has one loss. It's just great too to see Holy Cross also keep playing well without the great Bob Chesney doing great things out at James Madison. But man, this has just always been a team that's been defined by the run, and it's continuing this year. And it just seems as well like um great defense with Jacob Dobbs in the past and Liam Anderson as well in the past, and then now with Cortez or with Lopez, I'm sorry, Curtis Lopez that you mentioned. So going on with my first game of the week, I got Dartmouth Princeton. This game, Dartmouth needs this game to rebound. It's on ESPNU on Friday night. Dartmouth lost last week to Harvard, as if the Ivy League could get any more confusing at this point. But Princeton's 2-5. It's just kind of crazy because this is a year where you're used to seeing Dartmouth, Princeton define the Ivy League race before Harvard, Yale. But Princeton's 2-5. They're struggling. I think the key here, though, the key to beating Dartmouth is shutting down Q Jones because Q Jones had that 182-yard game against Columbia and which Columbia is still in play for a shared Ivy League title, just their second ever. But Q Jones had 34 yards last week against Harvard, so Princeton might as well do their best playing against Ashton, Jeanty impression and shoving 9 in the box to stop Q Jones because I think that's what needed. But the defense has struggled for Princeton. They gave up 49 last week to Cornell, and the pass defense is particularly vulnerable. But Blaine Hippa is a quarterback that follows in the tradition of good other Ivy League quarterbacks or other Princeton quarterbacks like Kevin Davidson and Charles Knopf, who started the first game in LA Wildcats history. But Hippa threw for 3 touchdowns last week. He struggled this year, 7 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. He'll need to limit the turnovers to beat Dartmouth on Ivy League Friday night.
And if you're not listening to Matt Barry and Dan Mullen every Thursday night, and then not watching Ivy League football every Friday night, you're starting off every weekend wrong. So I would highly recommend you start America's best tradition, Ivy League Friday nights. It's actually fantastic football and some of the most meaningful football as, again, no postseason play. The regular season is the end all be all. For my next game of the week to watch, gonna go with UC Davis at Montana. This is gonna be really the UC Davis passing game versus the Montana run game. UC Davis is averaging 324 pass yards a game, which is second best in the entire FCS. Montana is averaging 223 rushing yards per game. Eli Gilman is really leading that charge by averaging 7.5 yards per carry, which is absolutely insane on a sample size of over 100 carries. It's second best in the FCS as well. On the defensive side of the ball, UC Davis linebacker David Meyer is really going to be the name to watch when Montana is on offense. He has 51 solo tackles on the year, not total, solo tackles. So it's really going to be up to David Meyer in that front seven to stop this Montana run game. I'm curious to see. The main thing I'm going to be watching during that game is, can Montana just control the clock so much with their strong run game that they don't leave any time for UC Davis, right? I feel like time of possession is going to be a huge factor in this. So that's going to be the main thing to watch.
Yeah, that game's on ESPN2. Some great after dark action for the Big
Yeah,
Sky.
Yes, I forgot to mention that. There's also like big ratings implications for the FCS.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, UC Davis definitely gets overshadowed by Montana, Idaho, Montana State, but they've had some solid, I mean, they're having a solid year right now. They are there. I mean, I have them in my top 10 in my weekly poll. They're just having a quality year. This is just really kind of a coming out party for UC Davis in that one late at night. For my next game, I have the biggest little game in America. I got Amherst versus Williams. This is Harvard Yale for D3. These schools meet again for geez, it's been over 130, 140 times these rivals have been meeting since. Let me look at the year because I focused my research on just the stats, but looking at the players though, this looks like the high-powered Williams offense versus the Amherst defense. Owen McHugh is a great dual threat. He's got 1,400 passing yards, 12 touchdowns, 306 rushing yards after sacks, and 6 touchdowns. And it'll be a challenge for him passing the ball against a real potential D3 All-America candidate in Luke Harmon, who has 59 tackles and 5 interceptions for the Amherst Mammoths. And this is just one of the most traditional rivalries. It definitely is a bucket list game that I think all people should go to. I mean, if you like Harvard Yale, you're gonna like Amherst Williams. They've been playing since 1884. And let me do my quick math. This year's meeting will be 75 plus 5, 80, the 138th meeting this year between both schools. So Amherst versus Williams, there's going to be a stream online. It'll be on Nesson for those in the New England area. And man, just a great rivalry. D3 rivalry's coming next week. This is just the appetizer with the NESCAC ending their season early.
We love the NESCAC getting two mentions on the show. I'm going to go with my final game, a rivalry that is back thanks to realignment. BYU Utah. It's the battle for the Beehive boot. It's permanently back as BYU and Utah are now in the Big 12. If you don't think that there's severe hate between these schools or that this isn't really like a real big college football rivalry, I don't know where you've been. Really, the best story that I can tell you, if you're remiss on the meaning of this game, is from the 1999 rendition of it, when a male cheerleader ran down the BYU sideline with the Utah flag after a big touchdown. A fan hopped down from the stands, a BYU fan, and tackled him. The cheerleader retaliated with landing like 7 punches on the guy. It's an insane happening at a big rivalry game. It led to the quote by NFL great Steve Smith, even our cheerleaders kicked your butt. So, and man, it's going to be, I'm so hyped that this game is back. And hopefully it's one of those that even though there's like 16 teams in the Big 12, hopefully we see it played every year. But no, awesome to see the Holy War back.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad to see back as a yearly game. It's just I don't know what Brett Yormark's doing. This game should be on the final weekend of the season. Like, why is it in the
Yeah,
middle of the
yeah.
year? Like,
You know what? I'll take it over it not being played.
yeah.
But preferably, yes. Can we put this on Thanksgiving weekend?
Yeah, hopefully next year that's what happens. So going on with my next game of the week, how about a little bit of big afternoon Saturday or Big Ten Saturday afternoon? NBC won't have a night game since Notre Dame and Florida State will be taking the night slot on NBC. So we get Minnesota Rutgers at noon on Fox. And I just think it's great that we have two teams in the middle of the pack of the Big Ten getting some network TV love. This one's on NBC, like I said. And you'll get to see two quality running backs. Kyle Monangai already has 931 yards in 8 games and 10 touchdowns. He should cross the 1,000-yard mark. And Darius Taylor, who's had a bit of a slower year, but went off in the Quick Lane Bowl last year. A lot of people remember his performance in the Quick Lane Bowl when he ran for over 200 yards. And Taylor's beginning to pick it up as well. He had 131 yards in this last game. But first and foremost, the most important storyline in this game is the Ethan Kaliakmanis payback game. Kaliakmanis played at Minnesota last year. He's starting at Rutgers this year. Can he get payback against his old coaching staff, especially when Rutgers needs it the most at 4-4, with a slate that includes Illinois, Maryland, and Michigan State in this Minnesota game for the Scarlet Knights to get bowl eligible in back-to-back years for the first time since 2013 and 2014. So Big Ten Saturday afternoon. Maybe they'll show the Fall Out Boy introduction or not, but I'm excited for this one because it's just good to see a matchup like this be on NBC and be on network TV.
Absolutely. No, we love it when the best games are on CBS, ABC, and NBC and Fox. It makes it a little different, more accessible. So you don't have to throw it on ESPN. You don't have to throw everything on a streaming network, college football. So Omar, that's it for me. Anything else you want to say before we hop off? On mute, my guy.
Oh, I really don't have anything else. This was great and this was quick. Um, quicker than we wanted to do, but just for the circumstances, I'm glad we were able to get it in.
It is not by choice that we are doing a little bit of a speedy podcast this week, but hopefully we can make up for it next week because there's a lot more to talk about. So,
Absolutely. Well, until next time, everyone, thanks for joining bright and early with us. That's Jackson. I'm Omar, the Burger Popper, and peace, love, and soul.